A doctor friend told me over dinner that a colleague was struggling with something that was creating risk of injury for patients. She'd been quietly stepping in, covering, handling it, because handling it was the right thing for the patient in the moment. What left her deeply unsettled was that every option for what to do next would punish her for trying. She could go to HR, but HR exists to manage the institution's liability, not to help two professionals figure out a patient safety problem. She could say something directly, but the colleague's employment structure has its own protections, and the person who reports a colleague becomes the difficult one. Now your name's on a file. Now your next review has an asterisk that could get you fired. So she's likely to continue covering. It's the best she can do under the circumstances, despite the risk to the patient and to herself. The institution that pays her isn't set up to do what all doctors literally swear to: protect patients. It's set up to protect itself. The practitioners and the system that pays them have conflicting goals. That night, I stayed up until 4 a.m. doing research. The Federal Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality has tracked hospital safety culture across thousands of U.S. hospitals for decades. Their finding is consistent. Hospitals where staff fear blame for raising problems have measurably worse patient outcomes. In one controlled trial, hospital units that trained staff to speak up about safety concerns saw adverse outcomes drop 37%. Units that didn't saw them rise 43%. More medication errors, more hospital-acquired infections, more patients dying. Not because the doctors and nurses don't care, because the unavoidable math my friend did at our dinner table is the same math being done in every hospital in the country. And when that math runs at institutional scale, the consequence is loss of life. At the Carl T. Hayden VA Medical Center in Phoenix, administrators kept 2 sets of books. When veterans called to request primary care, their names went on unofficial paper lists held in desk drawers. Only when a slot opened within the VA's 14-day performance target did the name get moved to the official electronic system. The facility reported average wait times of 24 days. The VA Inspector General found veterans actually waited nearly 115 days. The structural motivation wasn't complicated. Wait time performance was tied directly to bonuses and evaluations at every level, from the schedulers entering data to the senior leaders reviewing it. The VA paid $2.8 million in bonuses to senior executives that year. Every single one of the facility's 470 senior managers received a fully successful performance review. The institution had figured out what it was being measured on and gamed it. Not for the veterans on the other end of the phone, for the metric. Investigators found 1,700 veterans at Phoenix alone who had requested care and were never placed on any official list at all. Some of them died waiting. Thomas Breen was 71, Navy veteran. He arrived at the Phoenix VA in September 2013 with blood in his urine and a history of cancer. He was told there was a 7-month waiting list. He died of bladder cancer 2 months later. The VA called on December 6 to schedule his appointment. He had been dead for 6 days. The VA kept the real wait times in desk drawers. Clean numbers went into the official system. My industry has its own version of that drawer. There's something most people in corporate cybersecurity understand and almost nobody will admit to because it can get you fired. The job isn't protection. The job is liability management. Compliance checklists, audit trails, certification frameworks that exist so an organization can point to documentation when something goes wrong, not so that something doesn't go wrong. The structure is built for the aftermath. Pass the audit, satisfy the assessor, get the certificate on file, the calendar turns, do it again next year. I've sat through enough security audits to know how they actually work. When an assessment finds a vulnerability, the organization has a formal process for keeping it open. It's called an exception. Someone writes a sentence in a spreadsheet explaining why the risk is acceptable. The auditor notes the exception. The assessment passes. The vulnerability remains. It's not a flaw in the process, it is the process. Real risks, documented in obscure cells on a spreadsheet nobody outside the security team will ever read. Clean certificate on the wall. Same drawer, different filing cabinet. Verizon's forensic team has been analyzing breach investigations for over a decade. The pattern they found is worth sitting with. They have never once identified a breached company that was fully compliant at the time it was hit. Not once. Equifax held ISO 27001 certification, the international gold standard for information security management. Companies spend months preparing for that audit. EY, one of the big four accounting firms, signed off on it. Equifax also held 2 additional security certifications, 3 of the most rigorous in the industry, all active, all current. Meanwhile, a known vulnerability in their web application software had a patch available. Nobody applied it for 2 months. Nobody's bonus depended upon applying it. Someone's depended upon passing that audit. Attackers operated inside Equifax's system for 78 days without being detected. An expired security certificate had knocked their network monitoring tools offline for 19 months. The tools that would have caught the intrusion weren't running. 147.9 million Americans had their social security numbers exposed. The House Oversight Committee called the breach entirely preventable. The Canadian Privacy Commissioner was more direct. It was not reasonable, the commissioner wrote, to rely on the certification as assurance of adequate security when the company's own internal tests had already identified problems. This pattern goes back to at least 2013, when Target was certified compliant on the payment industry's own security standard 2 months before a breach that cost $200 million and ended the CEO's career. It's still happening. In 2024, Change Healthcare, the company that processes roughly half of all medical claims in the United States, was breached through a login screen that didn't require a second verification step beyond a password. $2.457 billion in damages so far, 192.7 million people affected. My friend's hospital, the VA, Equifax, Target, Change Healthcare. Different industries, different sakes, same structure. The institution claims to do one thing. It's set up to do another. The people it's supposed to serve don't know to ask which is which, and the people inside who do know have done the math on what happens if they speak up. Domino's Pizza, late 2009. Stock at $2.83 a share. Same-store sales down nearly 5%, 7 times worse than the industry average. In consumer taste tests, tied for dead last with Chuck E. Cheese. The company claimed to make good pizza. It was set up to deliver the cheapest possible ingredients as fast as possible. Every customer knew it. The company knew it. What happened next is still one of the strangest things a public company has ever done. Domino's took its own internal focus group footage, customers calling the pizza cardboard and the worst I ever had, and aired it on national television. CEO Patrick Doyle didn't spin it. He said the product was bad. Then, the company reformulated the entire recipe from scratch, changed every ingredient, and retrained 180,000 employees across 9,000 franchise locations. Revenue jumped 14.3% the next quarter. The stock rose 130% in 12 months. Domino's eventually overtook Pizza Hut to become the largest pizza chain in the world. By 2018, David Chang was featuring Domino's on his Netflix show Ugly Delicious and telling Stephen Colbert it was great pizza. A 2 Michelin star chef ordering Domino's on camera. The stock didn't rise because the CEO was brave. It rose because he closed the gap between what the company claimed and what it was actually set up to do. To be fair, there's a version of the story that goes the other direction. Everlane, the clothing company, trademarked the phrase radical transparency and published cost breakdowns on every product. Growth was extraordinary. The company raised money at a $250 million valuation, positioning itself as a future billion-dollar brand. But the transparency was only on the price tags. Underneath, the company was set up for the same things every fashion brand is set up for: low labor costs, fast growth, maximum margins. When employees tried to unionize in 2020, the gap became visible. Leadership discouraged the union, claiming it would reduce transparency. Former employees published a 7-page manifesto documenting racial discrimination. The New York Times headline, Everlane's promise of radical transparency unravels. The company took on debt to cover inventory, cycled through CEOs, and by 2024, revenue had slid to a fraction of expectations and was still shrinking. The union didn't cause the decline. The decline happened because the brand's promise and the company's actual priorities were never aligned. You can't slap a transparent label on top of business as usual and expect it to hold. The day after dinner, I went on a dog walk with my cousin. He's a property and casualty insurance producer. He'd been listening to me go on about all of this, and he said something like, I mean, at least in my line of work, it's all spelled out clearly. Here's what's covered, here's what isn't, here's the number, you signed it. Then he dared me to go read my own homeowner's insurance policy. So I pulled it up on my phone that night, sitting on the couch with the dog asleep on my feet. Everything covered was listed, everything excluded was listed. The dollar limits were explicit. The conditions under which a claim pays out were written down. Just a contract that said exactly what it would do, what it wouldn't, and what it would cost. The policy I'd been ignoring for 3 years is more readable than the terms that I agreed to that morning to update an app on my phone. That's not a figure of speech. When researchers tested readability across 17 different types of consumer contracts, auto insurance policies scored at a 9th grade reading level, the most readable of any category. Credit card agreements hit 12th grade. Tech terms of service required a college education. Insurance got this way because nobody trusts it. Accenture surveyed 49,000 consumers across 33 countries in 2023. Only 39% believe insurance companies have their best interests at heart. That deep, persistent distrust is exactly what produced 50 years of regulation requiring clarity. Of 776 plain language laws in the United States, 209 of them, 42%, govern insurance documents. Banking has 41. Healthcare has a total of 23. Lawmakers looked at the insurance industry and said, "We don't trust you to be clear on your own, so we're going to make you." The industry fought it. Industry representatives warned regulators that changing readability standards would lead to unintended consequences and new litigation. For decades, insurers resisted every layer of consumer protection regulation that was imposed on them. And then the most regulated consumer-facing industry in the country became one of the most stable and consistently profitable. We trust our doctors. We trust the IT guy. Whether someone is in cybersecurity, networking, software engineering, or desktop support, they're all the IT guy to most people, and you assume they've got it handled. That trust is what allows medicine and cybersecurity to stay opaque. Nobody's demanding that hospital safety reports be written at a 9th grade reading level. Nobody's asking to read the exceptions spreadsheet from the last security audit. We just trust that the specialists are doing what they say they're doing. The least trusted industry produced the most transparent document. The most trusted institutions hide the truth in desk drawers and spreadsheet exceptions. There's a complication though. Trusted Choice found that 86% of homeowners say they feel confident they understand their coverage. When actually tested on basic questions about their own policy, only 29% passed. The transparency is in the document. It always has been. It's sitting in your email or your filing cabinet right now. It says exactly what will and won't happen if your house floods, your roof caves in, your kitchen catches fire, but nobody sat down with you and walked you through it. The agent who sold you the policy earned a commission when you signed. After that, the incentive to make sure you actually understood what you bought disappeared. Domino's didn't just admit the pizza was bad, they changed everything about how the company operated and made the honesty impossible to miss. The insurance industry was forced into writing the clearest consumer contract in America, and it became one of the most stable and profitable industries in the country. But the clarity stops at the document. Nobody, to my knowledge, has bothered to close that last gap. People treat medicine, cybersecurity, and insurance like dark arts, best left to the specialists. The IT guy has it handled. I've been the IT guy for 20 years. None of these fields are actually dark arts. They all dissolve into logic once you understand them. The VA's wait time system is a bonus structure. A security certification is a spreadsheet full of accepted exceptions. An insurance policy is a contract written at a 9th grade reading level that says exactly what it will and it won't do. The difference isn't complexity, it's incentive. The fields that stay opaque do so because it's useful. Nobody questions the system when they assume only the specialists can understand it. The one industry that got forced into clarity got there because nobody trusted it enough to leave it alone. So, if you run a team, a department, a company, what does your last performance review actually reward? If someone on your team saw a problem tomorrow and did the math on what happens if they name it, would they say something? Or would they do what my friend did at dinner, care about 3 things at once and stay quiet?